We go back to the land of the Infernal Mirror on Jagged Mara. What do you think?
Well, so far, if there's any trend, if I was a betting man, you look at this map and the catapult plays define pretty much everything. But the real trend isn't even the catapult because they'll both fight to death. They will fight to the death over the camps at the beginning of this one. But whoever wins the Jagged Maw game seems to just always tilt the other guy to the point where game two, just everything goes wrong. Whoever loses to the catapult, everything goes wrong in game two. I'd like to see somebody, buck that trend, or maybe we just both see something insane this game again. I don't know if it's going to be single catapult, double catapult. We've had one tower versus one tower. We've had two towers versus two towers. We've had one versus two, and we've had the one beat the two. So I don't know. How much more deep fried do you think the mirror matchup on Jagged Maw can really get, BeoMulf?
It can get as deep fried as the number of turrets on the speed can go. We saw 2 versus 2. All right. And Nate, I think it is high time. Now, granted, this is still early on. These matches were kind of played consistently. This will be off replays. This result has or the this game has already happened. But again, I think we're gonna see 3 turrets. I think we're gonna see 4 turrets. I think we're gonna see every single imp turn itself into a turret by the time that this tournament's over.
Let us pray. Can only imagine. Here we are. We are loaded in onto Jagged Maw. And absolutely no surprise seeing the structures put very far out. I mean, it's all about the rally, right? It's all about the rally. It's all about getting to that spot to do it before everybody else does. But we're not seeing the craziest fast imp, I suppose, yet for the tower. Anyway, might be coming out in the near future, lining up with the finishing of the Iron Vault. So in the top right, we've got KroLu as the red Infernal. And in the bottom right, we've got Riser as the blue Infernal. So it's all about the camps on this one. If you haven't seen a game played on this map yet, the most important thing you need to know is that there are 2 catapults that you can take as camps very early on. And the majority of the games that we've seen played on this map have completely revolved around the fights that take place around those catapults. So just something to keep your eye on as we expect to see players continue to keep their focus on those camps. So expansion is going to go up though for Riser. So he's not actually going to go for the super fast contest here.
That is, I hope he's got something interesting. Now, Riser, of course, is I mean, he's a StarCraft player, semi-pro, but he's known for some creative stuff. Certainly for playing things a little bit differently. So I'm curious to see what's going to happen here, what his defensive setup is. For now, he's got a Shroud Stone on the high ground, but that actually doesn't defend just a run by into the main, and it certainly doesn't really defend the wall on the right side as well. So I'm very curious to see what exactly is going to happen. Certainly, it gives a ton of money to our red player. It certainly gives a ton of money to KroLu. The Spire is going to go down this gaunt, is going to turn this into 6 Fiends. It's going to give you the Vision Camp. And also, as we know, as we've seen, if you win the fight there, if you get the Vision Camp, and actually, he made a little bit of a mistake, I guess, only gets 4 Fiends off of that camp, not the full 6. This unlocks the Siege Camp, and this unlocks that powerful pressure. So again, the question, how does Riser have something planned for this? And if so, what is the plan?
Right? I was trying to think to myself, like, what could be the individual purpose of some of the choices? As I say that, the Fiends just grab the Gaunt in his base. So I wanted to say that this Shroud Stone was maybe supposed to be like a 2nd level up so that a Siege Rush couldn't see it. But now it's just an extra liability. So Shroud Stone picked off very quickly. And this is the immediate value demonstrated in the meta, right? That's why you go for the camp, so that you can use the Infest onto them, get extra Fiends, and now you've got an army on top of your opponent's production very early on. Tries to make the turret immediately, gets destroyed in production. That's a lot of money down the hole, and another Gaunt finishes. Micro's back, the Fiends blocking the pathing, BeoMulf, and well, this is about what we expect on this map. KroLu with some very aggressive play. What's the move here? He's going to try to squeeze out another Gaunt. There's the up charge, right? Uses the top bar ability to get a few more charges to produce with, but that's the problem, is you snowball. Every unit that dies turns into more Fiends. So every unit you build is like building units for your opponent in this situation, and that is just brutal.
Yeah, I think there's a reason that there are a couple maps that like going for quick expand builds are not viable. Broken Crown, you can kind of get away with it depending on the build. Jagged Maw, Titan's Causeway, there we go, the other one. Not really. It is just too fast. The creep camps are too readily available. The natural's too wide open. I do appreciate the idea from Riser to try to see if this was possible. Unfortunately, the answer is at least against KroLu, it's not.
Yeah, just don't think we're there yet, especially if any map, this one in particular. There's like all the different degrees to the meta, in that it's not just about what's good, it's about strategies that exist to try and take advantage of it in a way too. So you have builds that are like, okay, if he does the standard thing here, then this one-off strategy can really punish that for this reason. And just for the sake of discussion, earlier today we did have a game where there was a double conclave opening that held the catapult rush by the opposing player, and because they had so many gaunts for it. So that was one way we saw that be held. And I wasn't sure if he was trying to do something like that, but because it was like a macro build where maybe he was ready for a single or double catapult rush because of when that would hit, it ended up just being like, no, I'm going to attack you with my first 2 gaunts and 10 fiends, and it's over. So just brutal, really.
And it's kind of fun loading into this as well, because I'm like, wait a minute. So I don't recognize the name KroLu, but I do recognize, and it went like Moon, because I play him on ladder a lot. So wait a minute here. I know who this is. But anyways, we're moving into our second game. We're, of course, going to see the conclaves go down as we expect, because we talked about Jagged Maw, right? The speed camp in the middle being the important thing. Riser tried to go and get a little defensive, didn't really work. On this map, it's all about the speed camps. There are 2 of them accessible. We're gonna see him actually go and mine through, so he can actually make a pretty cool rotation to go speed camp, resource camp, and he's not gonna turn this into a meat farm. He's opening up the entire pathway. So instead of going right side then left side, he's gonna get himself 2 resource camps and 2 speed camps, and also have an attack path into KroLu's natural.
Fascinating. So it opens up this roundabout path across the map. And also want to give a shout out back to Warcraft in chat, just letting people know KroLu is a Warcraft 3 player from Poland. So bit of his history there as we get to watch him take a nice start so far in this match. But that's the other interesting thing. We talk about how there's like these cool late game mechanics to clear the trees, but it's also worth just got to mention every now and again for anybody new that your workers can just go. You can just click the individual trees and just cut them down with your workers. So you can open those paths really early if you have a very specific type of strategy in mind. And because so many of the buffs, like you said, BeoMulf, are kind of wrapped around the exterior of this one, we see players take that early worker just to open it up. And tries to get a dive onto the gaunt, not going to be able to do so. And Riser continues to begin his plan of taking this speed camp.
So the one problem with this is that this is very visible, if you want to talk about it like that, because eventually we're going to see the rotation of the bottom side camp, and KroLu is going to go and take that. He's going to go cut right on through. So by sending the imp so early and cutting that second tree down so early, what that means is, well, okay, Gaunt takes damage. Gaunt takes significant damage. KroLu's aware of this, and he's actually going to go. And again, the idea of this is pretty cool, right? Because you take the bottom side, you kind of rotate around, steal a camp from your opponent. Most players take the closer base. This is not what's going to happen. And by the way, as we see what happens right there, for infest conversions, what matter is not necessarily who gets the kill to convert. What matters is who gets the first hit. So who triggers infest first? Infest does not stack. KroLu gets his infest first off on all of the goats, which means that even as Riser's able to go and get the last hit, get the more recent hit, it still converts in favor of KroLu. So yes, the Fiend died, but that's not something that's getting added in to Riser's army. So this was a cool idea. He gets some of the value of it, but doesn't get everything. He gets like one of the extra resource camps. He's still gonna have to rotate left side. KroLu does a really nice job defending just by choosing where he's going to go and take the camp first.
And heads up play now heading towards the northwest. As you mentioned, we see that top vision camp being taken by Riser, and it's 2 pretty direct paths through the middle towards your base. So that vision camp, even if it's a lower unit count, you don't get as many of the fiends off of it. Just the value that having that in the game provides. That's your early vision tower. It's very difficult to go attack your base, especially when you think about the fact that because of the way that he opened to take those camps, there's already vision on the outside of the map. It's not like there's anywhere that you could really run by to try to catch him off guard. If you go on the top, run into his army. If you go around the side of the middle, they have vision. So there's still kind of interesting ways that the camps can be used defensively in that manner. He just naturally has a lot of map control, and that's something that this game pushes a lot with the camps.
And of course, another reason to try to, on this map in particular, another reason to go play on the map and not only just get the speed camps, but try to do a little bit more is it looks like that Shroudstone on the right side is going to get taken down by just a bunch of Fiends. And actually, yeah, Riser's going to try to go react to this, but it's just going to be late. He's going to have heavy pressure on into his natural if we can go. And maybe my feet behind. There we go. So the Speed Fiends are going to go try to get on top of this. And they're actually not going to get a ton. But the other thing that encourages you to be active on the map, on this map in particular, is not just the camps. There are a bunch of flowers on the map, and some of them are worth Therium, and some of them are worth Luminite, and they're actually mirrored. So you can go and, like, if there's a flower on the top right side next to the speed camp, there's also going to be a flower on the bottom left side next to the speed camp as well. So that is also another reason to go and try to find something on the map, getting an injection of Therium, and of course the health camps gives you another 75 Therium. That's really nice. Getting these economic injections on top of just the creep camps gives you power into your tech, gives you power into your natural and your third base and whatever you want to do. So again, just more reasons to be on the map.
Yeah, it's a big part of it. On one hand, there's the traditional sense of macro and then maybe going out and getting resources that are out on the map. But in this game, the camps are effectively another resource. And probably worth pointing out that we have still had some interesting games where one player focuses much more on them than the other. We've seen that even today be something that can be done. But it's very clear that if you're out doing stuff and your opponent is trying to catch you off guard or do stuff, then you're gonna have some chance to see it. And does he get a sight of that? Doombringer is approaching his base. His whole army is out towards the South Vision camp, so this is going to be a little bit awkward. 8 Gaunt drop in the natural. That bounce glaive infest attack already doing work. He's going to be able to spawn 4 Fiends, which will help rip and tear that tower down. The army in the middle actually ends up getting jumped, so it's a very weird situation where huge amounts of damage from the Doombringer, which he can always load back up and pull away, but he's got a little bit of something to worry about at home. He's going to summon the advanced Shadow Stone to try and help defend, or Shroud Stone rather, to keep things together. And it's also going to get vision of the other Doombringer across the map there too.
Although this Doombringer, I don't know if it ever had gaunts in it, but it certainly does not now. It's kind of forced back home, nothing inside of it. Riser is still getting a ton of damage with this. He forced out, of course. He did have to spend his own animus to keep himself safe, but he forces out the manifestation on the other side. And now and he got a lot of the army. I don't think he got any economic damage done, but I think he killed a lot of the army. And by the way, Nate, behind this, there's a third shrine done. The economy that Riser's been able to develop for himself is really, really solid. But you have to be careful because, again, a lot of animus was spent to build more charges. This is an attack coming in, but the Fiends are going to get a surround on top of all of the Gaunts here. And again, they're the most important part of this composition. They're the most important part of this army. And at this point, everything has to turn into Fiends so they don't get converted. They have to run away. And good luck getting a third base now, KroLu. Riser, he's got total map control, but the Doombringer on the other side is going to try to do something to dislodge this. And for the time, he's doing a really nice job of that.
Yeah, it kind of created a little mini choke point in there. Of course, the Fell Hogs you can infest those, so your supply structure in a weird way kind of turns against you. The counter harass has been great for trying to buy time, but I think the biggest thing that you mentioned, of course, there is another Doombringer on the offensive side for Riser, and more importantly, Riser's third base just tucked away. You could almost say in a sort of secluded area. I'm not sure what the other, secluded space perhaps. He's got this third going, and so despite the damage he's taken, still got quite a bit of money coming in and has the harass units in the Therium patch of KroLu's main.
Yeah, and it just gets a little bit awkward. Yeah, KroLu had a nice drop. He did a really good job of, even if it didn't get a ton of damage, I think it got like a couple imps. The big value out of that was he forced his opponent's army to back off a little bit, to go and make a little bit more space. But again, the problem is, look at this. We got a fully saturated third base. It's mining Therium. It's mining Luminite on the right side. Well, briefly, that's going to happen because there's a drop right here as a Shroudstone will be manifested to at least target fire the Doombringer down, making this a one-way trip, and it will. So these imps, they're trapped. There's no way to get out anymore. They're going to get the manifestation. That's solid. But this army will join eventually. I'm going to assume Gaunt drop comes in on the backside, and I should drop. There we go. Drops on top of everything. This will die.
Yeah, it looked like he was trying to focus the Doombringer, and that's the other thing too. Because it lands and generates its own shroud, if it's landed, it's guaranteed to be healing, right? It's just kind of it's one of those things we're getting used to with this mechanic. There's lots of games where you can spread stuff around, but in this game for the Infernals, it gives you that white health. So that's the additional HP that you get just from being on the shroud. So you kind of go there, you're kind of powering up, charging up a little bit from the shroud, and then you take that to the other side. But he was trying to focus down that Doombringer with the gaunts right as they were being finished off, and just that extra little bit of regen counteracts the effects of that infest. But we just saw it floating overhead. It's got about 2 health, I think, at this point, barely flying.
So the trick then is you just go and you take the healing camp and you just sit Doombringer there for however long it takes to heal it back up, and then you go again maybe, or maybe you just sacrifice it and build another one. Both are valid. But for now, Vision Camp goes down aggressively. So Riser now knows everything that's happening. He knows the sum totality of his army, of his opponent's army position. This third base is not even halfway done at this point. It's a big problem. And also now it's a bunch of imps, which if you're Riser at this point, these imps are not imps, Nate. They are proper conversions. They're an opportunity to build more of your own army on your opponent's side of the map. It's very nice for you to get those free trades. And again, at this point, the third base...
He's in the back of his main too. He's counter harassing on a few fronts. It looks like there's something in that bottom Grove base. He's got the Doombringer in the main. Had a little something going on the southern third expansion. So KroLu is hitting with some big attacks, big harass while trying to defend against this and almost taking out that main shrine. The Magmadons using their stomp to try and delay that. But oh my gosh, that main base has got to... oh man, the amount of health on that. Scary. Very, very, very scary. He's gonna come and bring out the putter to tap that one, and I'm expecting in a little bit.
Honestly, a bit of a mistake there from KroLu. I think you target that down. It is literally on probably about like 1 HP. So you send a single imp in, and now there's no opportunity because there are more. There's an army here now, so the drop on top, it's probably not going to kill it. But imagine if he knocks that down, suddenly this game swings on its head. Yeah, the third base was canceled,
That's
but
huge.
You don't have a main.
That's huge. It's not cheap to build stuff. He does get the pick on. Oh, it looks like he's doing some kind of. Yeah, I think he was able to get it there. So no more opportunity. You have to find some other attempt to move out there. And this still presents an interesting problem because in spite of everything that's happened, and yes, he's brought him back to his base. He's done this harass. He's done this, that, the other thing. The Magmadons and this army control are going to be so important in the next few minutes because he just doesn't. He never really got that third for himself, right? I think he's just now taking it, but you need to keep in mind that's also that on this map, that spot for a third base is much more vulnerable than that tucked away forest area. So if he steps out, it's not like he's going to need to cut down trees or anything to send a few fiends into that base.
Yeah, and not only is it less or more vulnerable, Nate, it doesn't have Therium. So when we talk about these compositions, and generally you just want a ton of Magmadons to just dive on top of things. They're by far the most powerful unit that an Infernal can get at this point. Magmadons cost 150 Therium. They are expensive. They are important to get. So the fact that not only here is Riser sitting on an extra base, he's sitting on a base with Therium as well makes life really hard. So it's going to be another cancel. It's going to deny the third base even further. And Riser doesn't have to do any more than this. Realistically, he can take a fourth base if he'd like. Looks like we do have something going to attack the natural. I just see a couple blue dots. I'm not really sure what they are. There we go. Double Doombringer drop. Okay, I love that.
Well, there you go. So bring in a little bit more, and this is that harass we've been talking about. Now the Magmadon's actually going to try and catch the army in the center. A tremendous amount of stomps coming out, but it's a very awkward situation to be in because, again, his army, yes, a lot of Magmadons, but not really much else. So once they use that stompy stomp, once the temper tantrum's over, you usually find yourself a little bit tired. And know from experience, BeoMulf, they're not going to be able to win the rest of that fight. The double Doombringer tries to hit that south expansion one more time. So yes, you're going to kill some of the imps, but you have no third base again. And we continue to see Riser make progress. He's been wailed away at economically, but his overall army retention has just been on the level that it needs for him to be in a good spot. So defensively, he can still kind of block with the Magmadon trample if that's what he wants to do, but KroLu doesn't have much else to throw at this army.
He is able to walk on top, but again, the problem is as you said, once those tramples are down, they do single target damage. They don't shred the gaunts in the way that you would like. Now, shout out to KroLu, right? He did take the right side base down, so you say, yeah, KroLu's only on 2 bases. So too is Riser. The economy for him is not incredible. Again, the problem though is his army is just so much better that it is very, very difficult KroLu to deal with. It's very difficult for KroLu to respond to, but the Gaunt drop on the right side is going to set up a bit of a surround here, maybe spawn some more fiends, but can it deal with all the Magmadon is the question, and I think the answer to that one's no, Nate.
Yeah, the Shroud Stones are finally going down, and that's the other thing too. The Gaunt damage doesn't really seem. There's a little 1v1 in the top right of this fight between one Gaunt and Magmadon. It's not really doing much work on that white health. You get the health from the opponent's Shroud as well, which is another reason why Infernal versus Infernal can just become such a chaotic matchup. The Magmadon is really all about the crowd control. It's less about the damage. It's less about winning the fight. It's more about space, creating space or denying space. So once your army is nothing but Magmadons, then it gets a little bit tougher.
That it does, but good news is that while the first part of our day was very one-sided, Nate, I think we had 4-2-0s in a row or something.
Yes.
We've had a nice string now of a 3-game series, and this one is no different. KroLu and Riser game 3, and wow. Titan's Causeway is going to be our third map. That is...
All right. Let's do it.
Yeah, that is a... You cannot expand on this map. As far as I'm concerned, it is very aggressive, and more importantly, it's a map that was not on ladder for quite a while. It was a map like pre-alpha, alpha 1, it was the ladder map, but really not much longer than that. This is not something that these players, unless there's something prepped, Nate, unless there's something that one of these players was KroLu's map pick, so unless KroLu's been prepping something, this is not something they're going to have a ton of experience with, and it is a very aggressive map.
Yes, definitely more in the realm of like a Steps of War type experience. So we already know the Infernal matchup can get pretty crazy. We'll just have to keep our eyes peeled to see who comes out on top. I do love that we get to a game 3, and I did see a question in chat that felt like a fun one to answer. But engine-wise, Frost Giant created their own underlying RTS tech called Snowplate. There's a lot of great documentation and videos out there about it, but they built that for themselves. Graphically, I think the engine goes through Unreal Engine 5, so some pretty cool advanced features available even in the early beta, like DLSS and frame gen. Fun to mess around with if you haven't tried the beta yet, but technologically wise, they've got some cool foundational stuff being built up. That's awesome to see.
It's also led to some pretty cool production side of things. I mean, you'll notice that we have the Gaunt models just in the production stack, because you can do that. It's a lot easier to go in and pull, say, a Gaunt model out of a UE5 game than it is a, StarCraft's custom, whatever it was called. That custom.
Yeah, a lot of custom MPQs and all of this, but yeah, it's one of the things that we love, we gamers love about Unreal. A lot of transferable stuff, whether it's for production or for gameplay. The tower for the speed camp, very early, but denied by 2 fiends. That's the cancel since the imp is still there, so not completely a loss, and we'll restart it. But you've got a lot of choke points. You've got dark paths. You were saying this map could be scary. But what were you gonna say? Sorry.
We talk about how scary this map is. I am so happy that this is not like the pre-alpha, which, granted, we would have Infernals if this was pre-alpha, but more importantly, I don't know how much you played in that test, but this entire map was all about this camp right here, and players would pull bobs and repair scouts as much as possible.
Oh yeah, that was like the first build for taking the camp. Yeah. Send the dog. Was like 1 dog and 1 bob, and you could take the first one. That was like the whole entire thing. And no, that pre-alpha tournament, that was where I did most of my play before this beta phase, because some of the control stuff's a little tougher for me because I use the uninverted camera drag that nobody really uses camera drag to move their game screen around, but I got absolutely demolished by Mana here back when it was just Exos and Skyriders every single game. The good old days, as we'll call them, a few years from now.
Exactly, but I would argue that these days are better than that. A bunch of fiends are going to show up here in the main base of Riser all of a sudden. Now, there's a meat farm right here, and there's a Gaunt, and there's a Brute, so it gets just about nothing done. But it was scary for a second, Nate.
Yeah, definitely could get a bit tense. Gonna get the Brute split there at the end. Try to deny the Fiend from the infest, like you talked about, it is a big deal. Whether or not you give that one to your opponent on the retake, but he is retreating. Riser getting jumped here by KroLu, manages to grab the other Gaunt, and all of a sudden you've got a very scary composition over here. Just a lot of forces. There is 1 Shroud Stone trying to defend this natural, but this base is also very wide open. You're not funneling him in anywhere. You can actually Is he nibbling it from the other side? Does he have the range? Well, the Gaunts can attack it while it's building. He can force him to come out and fight away if he wants to, but instead, doesn't hurt to just take more camps, right? That's the big thing for the Infernals, getting the infest, turning the camps into more fiends. You don't have to attack right now. You can just eat the map a little bit and use what you get to supplement the next attack.
So fun fact, we talk about how this map is a aggressive map, right? Is a map that, I mean, good luck taking your natural. It's insanely wide open. Well, Vanguard Bob Overcharge, which is an ability that has been tuned down a little bit since then. It was significantly stronger than it is right now, and as you all have seen that have been playing, it is still very strong. That was specifically overtuned because they knew how weak Defender's Advantage was going to be on this map. So the reason why Bob Overcharge was something that you actually just could not attack into whatsoever was specifically because of Titan's Causeway. Now, again, it's been pulled down and it's a lot more balanced now, and that's fine. But I think that just goes to illustrate how very difficult, how almost impossible it is to get a natural. As I say that, though, Riser does have his shrine done. He's got a couple Shroud Stones. He's setting himself up just a little bit more. And for now, at least, this game on this most aggressive map seems like it will go on just a little bit longer.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because you see an older map that was definitely, because we ended up getting other ones and we've been playing on them for a bit. You haven't thought as much about this one, but it definitely tries to like show off or demonstrate a few more of the concepts of what they're doing, because it's you have the elevation in play a little bit more with some of the terrain moving around, and that hasn't been as much of a factor in a lot of the other maps. They've been a little more flat, a little more even across, and playing with like the trees as terrain, having more malleable terrain than having cliffs that you can't really change as much. So it's kind of fun. The methodology is still what you've been practicing and learning over the last week or two, but you're playing on a map that maybe people weren't doing it on. You can still kind of get away with it if the other guy doesn't have a iron sharp strategy. Probably also worth pointing out, when people were playing on this map, Infernals were also not really a thing yet either for a bit.
This is true. It's also kind of cool as you talk about maps, how it's very clear that whenever every different map that Frostshine introduces, it's because they're trying to test one idea. You know, they're trying to test, escort missions and interesting siege camps or different map layouts and things like that. But we got double Gaunt drop here on both sides. And for now, it looks like KroLu's in a little bit better of a spot. There is, of course, this the Felhog, the meat farm right there. So that's going to get a couple more fiends. He's going to get right on top of the imps as well. And
looks
this
like he got a lot more fiends.
Yeah, this is seconds away from being an unmitigated disaster. None of the imps are dead yet. In fact, he's just going to go, he's going to
sniping the main
shrine.
He's just gonna snipe the main base shrine. He's got so many fiends from the Felhogs and the imps, and that is an unbelievably brutal loss to take early here. The harass has been held back, or at least somewhat defended on the other side, but KroLu sticking to his guns with the mega aggro play, and now he's got the high ground on the production. What do you do? He's dropping. He's like, yeah, I get Shroud Stones now, but that's not going to be a factor anymore. Whether you can stay alive on that single base won't matter much when you've given KroLu the map.
And even if we ignore the fact that, well, this is a mirror, so economic parity matters so much more, right? If I have access to the exact same stuff you do, I want to be mining as much as you do. It becomes very much more about that than like if you have not asynchronous, but asymmetric matchups, you can have economic disparities and it's okay because of how things go. But even without that, the damage that was done here is so significant because KroLu's been playing aggressively anyways, and now he's got double Doombringer across the map. These Shroud Stones, these units that have been made, are just not going to survive, and Riser, as greedy as he wanted to be, will not be able to greed out this game, and KroLu, he moves on to next weekend.
Very, very well done by KroLu, and it was a really cool series to watch. I feel like, especially when people are still figuring out the game, it's like, yeah, you make a couple of units, we move out, we can test some camps, maybe we trade a little bit, maybe it snowballs, maybe it doesn't. But, I think especially for us coming from, the SC2 side of things, where it's all about very fast-based harass, all about the harass play, getting out a drop fast or harass a unit. And from some of the Vanguards, we got to see the early Hornets to kind of serve that role. But I really like seeing the early Doombringer play come in, because it is such a different type of unit, but it works so well at supporting your attack with the way the Infernals gain that white health over time that... it's just nuts. Watching them both trying to micro it at the same time is very painful because of the bounce glaive and the infest. but it's definitely been a fun demonstration, I think, of some of the different types of matchups that we can get. It's been a blast casting this with you, and all the great games that we've had this week, man.